So I just got live here, and so this is season 2 of Eat This, Drink That. This is episode 2. This season we're having Steve Falconer, keeper of the sacred parchments, going to be leading us off. We're going to have Ali Khan, connoisseur of Emo's pizza reviews and food expert. And I'm Ryan Crosby. All jokes aside, let's get into this. Steve, what is your drink that for today?
Okay, we're 2 days from Halloween. Well, really, it's the weekend. So Halloween weekend, with everything going on, I imagine there's going to be a lot of house parties, Halloween parties, small gatherings, fun events. I was going to save this for a little later in season 2, but I say we talk about how to elevate making cocktails at home. It's actually really simple. You go out to...
We'll see about that.
Yes.
Oh, I can't wait.
Okay.
I cannot wait for the shopping list alone.
Yeah.
You, Ryan, write it down.
Yeah.
At X minutes in the podcast, I said, let's just wait for the shopping list.
I'm gonna write these notes down on the scroll.
Yes.
For the parchment.
Well, so it's nothing like my parchment of the pantry list. It's nothing like that.
I love the beer one. The beer one's awesome.
The beer one's pretty good. I can't even remember where I found that, but it's a really good one. So, I mean, everybody has gone out to a cocktail bar or mixology bar. Actually, a lot of restaurants have now, even, fast casual or casual restaurants, something more fun. They're all doing mixology programs. So everybody has a bartender in-house. They might not be quite as experimental as, say, a mixology or, Death and Company in Los Angeles and New York, something like that. The one that sits behind Kohl's, what was the name of that? The
Varnish?
Yeah, Varnish. They might not be quite as experimental as that, but they are elevating the cocktail experience. They're not just taking soda water from a gun and throwing in Jose Cuervo margarita mix that's not how they're doing it. So you can do the same things at home, and it's really simple. I broke it down into really 4 categories, but 2 of them are extra. So the first 2, it's ingredients and technique. That's the easiest way to elevate your program. So ingredients include the spirit, the mixer, the ice is very, very important.
Ice.
And then
it took 3 on the list, and he's already lost me. The ice. You know where I get my ice? The ice machine. Where do you get yours from? Like the Tudors?
You make the ice in your own house. Or there's actually companies that are making cocktail ice. There's a great one, Neve, in Los Angeles. You just buy a 10-pound bag of ice for your cocktails. It's not
How
cheap.
much does this ice cost? Like, let's think about this. 10-pound bag at the liquor store is like a couple bucks, right? Definitely less.
Yeah, like $3 or $4.
It's $25. But the ice is amazing.
I'm thinking of also those, they freeze those rubber spheres that you can get for whiskey.
That. Yeah, that's what I have. I just have.
I charge $16 per, just so you know.
I just have,
don't use tap water.
Cylinders. So mine just make round or a cylinder, and then I cut it in half, and I can use those for shaking or for old fashions or anything that is built over ice.
A cylinder.
Yeah, it's just it's
I have that.
Yeah, it's a cylinder. Instead of a ball, it's a cylinder.
Like something like this?
Yeah.
This is a guitar slide.
Yeah, but it's a little bit bigger.
Gotcha.
But ice is very important. It's as important as the mixer. So when you're shaking cocktails, you're going to get an extra 1.5 ounces from dilution that comes from the ice. So you're not just shaking for texture. You're actually shaking for dilution also. So say in the case of a margarita, you have 3.5 ounces of, or 3 ounces or 3.5 ounces of spirit and mixer. By the time you're done shaking, which is part of the technique, by the way, it's coming up, you're going to have another extra ounce and a half that has diluted the ingredients and brought it all together.
That's fascinating.
So,
Okay, so you telling me the $25 bag of ice, and we need to pull up how much a bag of ice at the liquor store.
yeah,
I think
Ryan,
you
why
got
don't you? Oh, it's $3 for a 10-pound bag. I just bought some.
three bucks, right? Might be even cheaper in Austin, but the $25 bag of ice. Are you saying that doesn't melt at all? I mean, of course it melts. I'm being dumb, but like, does it not melt as much as fast? Is that what you're saying?
And it's higher quality water. It doesn't melt as fast. You can Ryan, if you want, we can pull Neve up. I think it should still be in business in Los Angeles. They also press all the air out of the ice. Yeah, it's a
Wow.
pretty.
What is that?
Hey, is there a name for this, Steve? Is it called like freezer ice, or is it?
So look up NEVE. I think is the name of the company. It's, I think it's over in Glendale, in Los Angeles. But that's just one. So we're in the ingredients still. So let's go back a couple steps. Let's go to spirits. You're not going to buy a $7 vodka to make cocktails at home. You want to elevate your program to a better quality vodka, either different ingredients like rye or potato, or a higher quality vodka. There is a difference between a $6, $7, $7.50 of vodka and a $25. You can tell it immediately. Even though vodka is supposed to not taste like anything, you will notice the difference immediately.
Okay, let me ask you this, because I believe it. And one of the cool things about vodka is even if you go something super crazy, it's just not as expensive as other spirits. Right. But what do you not taste, or what is the difference when you have like Belvedere, or Pop-Off, which is the cheap drink?
That's perfect. So Pop-Off is going to taste more like fire. I mean, it is. It's going to taste like fire. It's not as refined. And refinement comes from distillation through the column still, and they're dialing in. They're just Pop-Off. I forgot that vodka even existed. That goes super fast through. They're just churning out product. So they're not really worried about refinement. Whereas Belvedere is a rye based. It's also very refined, very elegant. And the rye is spicy. So there's already a different flavor component to that vodka. Then, say in the case of a gin, or even more important is whiskeys, you talk about refinement. If it's just not a very good bourbon.
Let's say Jim Beam. Let's throw out Jim Beam or Jack Daniels. That's sort of the everyman's whiskey.
Yeah, but there are steps below those. I would say Jim Beam is your starting point, and then you can go up from there.
Evan Williams?
I'm talking McCormick. I mean, if you go look at the shelf,
isn't that a seasoning? Isn't that an Italian herb seasoning?
You know, there are low grade spirits. That people aren't really worried about the quality or the flavor, So next time you're in a liquor store shopping, just for fun, because usually people have their spirits in their head. They know what they want. Tito's has become super popular, so people walk into the store, they look for Tito's and they grab it. They don't look at what else is in that store. Next time you go, there are 2 shelves below where you're normally buying your spirits, and those qualities aren't very good. So you already want to start. I'm making cocktails at home. I'm going to elevate how good they are. So we're going to buy a better spirit. That's your starting point. Better spirit. Better bourbon, better vodka, better gin. Hendrix exploded in the gin world 10, 12 years ago. It was a different flavor and component inside. It was cucumber. People just fell in love with Hendrix. It was more expensive, but they made better. The simple G&T, the gin and tonic, was elevated because they used a better gin.
Every bartender I've asked in the past 5 years, if I said, "Hey, bartender's choice, make me a gin and tonic," they are always recommending Hendrix. Yeah. It was Tanqueray and Bombay for a while, right? Were the two.
Bombay, I remember Bombay. I just kind of would get the bottle. You know, I had a guy who was into gin way back when, an old boss of mine, he was a beef eater, man. He
Yep.
liked beef
Oh.
eater. He found that Bombay Sapphire had too much of that scope, that
It's
pepper,
too aromatic.
whatever. Yes, yeah, just too much of that. I don't know, mouthwash kind of thing, And beef
Yeah.
eater was just more of a clean burn. You know what I mean?
I've heard that as well. Actually, I've heard that was like a secret suggestion a couple times. Was the beef eater?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and Bombay Sapphire came out decades ago because they were elevating their gin program, and that was just another level of quality. The old school gin drinkers or the traditionalists are going to want something London dry, heavy juniper, and that's really the only flavor that's coming through there. You don't have to do that anymore. There was one that uses saffron. I think that's called Citadel. There's a ton of gins on the market. There's a ton of vodka. You have a lot to play with. So why already start at the bottom to make better cocktails at home when your bartender at the mixology club is not doing the same thing? So start
Okay,
there.
I just want to throw this out there, and I know you got a lot of categories, but I think the spirit thing is pretty big. It does make sense to I like the idea. You're in your store, you go to your shelf, and then you say, hey, look up a bit. But let me ask you this, because I'm a whiskey guy, right? I like bourbon. At what point are you saying this bourbon you shouldn't mix anything with? This is actually so good that it's complete. You don't want to use it in a cocktail. Where would your bar be for that, for whiskey?
That's a funny story. So, well, and funny only because there is a backstory to this. Just like
I know.
food. Just like
It
food.
involves him in his hazmat suit days.
Just like food, the better quality ingredients that you use for the dish that you make at home, the better that dish is going to taste. So it's the same with cocktails. And I think this last 15 years of the cocktail being elevated in restaurants have really shown people that cocktails are really almost another ingredient recipe for a restaurant. So it's an extension of the kitchen, even though it's not the kitchen. So right there, you want to start with, I'm going to use the best ingredient that I can afford for my budget to make that dish or cocktail taste the best. But I know you guys know about Pappy Van Winkle and the explosion of Pappy Van Winkle over the last 15 years.
You know what? Can I just say something? I've heard of it. You know it's really expensive. Could you just give me a quick rundown of it? Because basically all I really know about this is like, oh yeah, they got Pappy, and I'm like, wow, cool. I just know it's expensive. That's it.
So you're not going to make like a Pappy and Coke, are you?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know,
So-
Pappy and Coke. I mean, I love the name.
Backstory on Pappy is just the Van Winkle family made these bourbons at the Stetzel Weller distillery a long time ago. I want to say up until like 72 or 73. I could be totally wrong on all the history of this, but it's a quick backstory. The family left the bourbon business, and it goes back generations, the Van Winkle family. Stetzel Weller continued up until like 1993. That distillery closed. Julian Van Winkle, who I think is either the great grandson or the grandson of who started Van Winkle Bourbons, he came back. He's partnered with Buffalo Trace. Buffalo Trace does a whole bunch of different bourbons. It's not just Buffalo Trace. There's a slew of labels they produce. One of those houses is the Van Winkle Bourbon Collection, with Julian Van Winkle tasting. There's a whole other section of Blanton's and Elmer T. Lee that's actually, I think it's still half owned by a Japanese company. So that company comes in Buffalo Trace. They put the Blanton's thing together. The Japanese found bourbon in the late 80s, mid 80s, late 80s, and fell in love with it and just started taking as much as they could. I think that's where that company started. I could be.
This stuff's $1,000 a bottle.
Huh?
$1,000 a bottle for Pappy Winkle.
Yes. So here's the backstory. No one really, 20 years ago, Pappy was around. Most of the time it sat on the shelf. No one really knew about it. There
Wow.
was David Chang with his what's the peach, Lucky Peach. So there were
Yeah.
a couple things. Julian Van Winkle and David Chang either did a video or it was in an article in that magazine where
Uh-huh.
they made an old fashioned with Pappy Van Winkle 15. Could have been a Manhattan, but it was a cocktail with Pappy 15 in the idea of you want to elevate your cocktails. The easiest way is to elevate the ingredients that you use. So why not? Let's just use a $200 bourbon to make. And this is how it was less expensive a long time ago, 15 years
Mhm.
ago. You could still
The
find it on
15 now
the
is
shelf
2,800 for a Pappy
because
15.
everybody wants it.
2,800.
And Buffalo
Holy.
Trace and Julian Van Winkle didn't increase production when this exploded. They kept
Oh.
it the same. It's not, they didn't want to hurt the recipe. So anyway, David Chang, they're drinking a very expensive old fashioned made with Pappy 15. It exploded. I think there were other circumstances to maybe push the explosion. That was the one I remember, and there was an immediate effect because people did love David Chang's show and his Lucky Peach. I think it's Lucky Peach, right? The magazine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
I mean, it's long. I mean, it ended a few years
yeah.
ago. But
I mean,
it's,
I was in
when was this?
what?
When did this happen?
So this is I'm going to say 08, 2008. You know, I
So
was
I mean,
working
this is
retail at this time. Our arrival of Pappy Van Winkle would be very unceremonious. It would come in, a couple of employees would buy a bottle. I'm going to buy one. I ran out. It would go on the shelf, and then people would buy it. This is also pre-bourbon explosion, where all the new people to the world of whiskey and spirits clung on to bourbon, and bourbon blew up, and bourbon sales skyrocketed, and all the sought after bourbons like Blanton's went from $50 to 100. Elmer T. Lee,
Mm.
you can't even find anymore. The Eagle Rares, that's the whole thing on TikTok. Just start looking up TikTok bourbon. There's even these bourbon people that start bashing on bourbons they don't like. And these aren't inexpensive bourbons either. These are like $100 bourbons. And they immediately become the most hated bourbon because of these videos on TikTok. I've seen articles about it. It's pretty funny. So anyway, that was the elevation of Pappy Van Winkle in the cocktail. Everybody needed to have Pappy Van Winkle. It became harder and harder and harder to buy, and the prices just started going up. Secondary market is where it goes up. So somebody wins. Now it's usually a lottery at a store. So you go to your
Wow.
retailer, Pappy comes in right around November, right around Thanksgiving. If you
Uh-huh.
win the lottery of a Pappy Van Winkle 15 and you just pay retail for it, you will immediately go to another liquor store and put that on consignment. They'll pay you for it, and you'll make a lot of
Wow.
money off of it. And then the price.
Is there any do you think there's any undiscovered Pappy Van Winkles that are sitting around, Steve?
No,
Good question.
I think
No.
the oldest is 23, and we are
Oh, I'm sorry. I mean like new brand, like a
Another
brand,
brand. What's the
like
next?
another.
no. That's like playing the lottery. It's like betting on the Super Bowl. Well, maybe not the Super Bowl, but
That's interesting. So it's supply and demand mixed with hype.
yeah, it's a lot of hype.
Yeah.
I think it's a lot
Is
of hype in bourbon. But
What's a bourbon? How about Steve? What's a bourbon that's so good you would not make a cocktail with it? What would
There
be
you go.
your bourbon for that?
so I am still a fan of Blanton's. When I was in my early 20s, I started drinking Blanton's. That was the bourbon the restaurant um, had. The restaurant that
Yeah.
I worked at, everybody drank Blanton's. You just drink it on.
And you want that with like a big cube of ice in there?
Yeah, and back then I
Yeah.
drink more bourbon than I did wine. So, like Old Forester was our poker bourbon. So that's when we would make cocktails, old fashions, something like that. But Blanton's was sit down on the rocks or neat, depending on the temperature outside, and drink.
What about tequila? I know everyone's like crazy about tequila shots, right? Like a lot of the food industry guys say, "Hey, when we're drinking, we're doing tequila. It kind of is the best thing if you're in this industry." Is there a sort of a higher end tequila that you would put in your margaritas?
Oh yeah. So that again, you elevate the quality of the ingredient, your cocktail is going to be better. I think you should at least spend $30 on a tequila. The length of time
Whoa,
the
really?
agaves,
That's
yeah.
big. Hey, hang on. I'll just say this in my house, like even like a Herradura, Humidor, not Espolón, but I'll use Espolón, Coralejo. Usually, I'm like, yeah, those are kind of my margaritas. But 30, I mean, you're getting near Patron prices.
Yeah.
Really, $30?
So again, quality and the length of time the agave has to sit in the ground automatically just makes it a little more expensive. Agave has to be in the ground for at least 6 years before you can even harvest it to produce tequila. So there are two categories that all get to use the word tequila. Mixto, which is your Cuervo Gold, that 49% of what's in that bottle, the sugars can come from something else. They don't have to all come from the agave plant.
Oh,
In
interesting.
that same umbrella is the 100% blue agave tequilas. Those are all the sugars come from the plant, the agave plant. So you want to start right there. You don't want to drink mixto. That sugar
Good
that
advice. No mixto.
no mix.
No,
So
no, no.
because everyone kind of goes for Cuervo first, right? That's the Jack Daniels of tequila. if
Well,
you will.
they have 8 labels. I mean, they have.
I'm just saying the everyman sort of
Yeah.
tequila would be something like that. What about like Casamigos, for example? What do you think about that one, Steve?
So, I mean, George Clooney blew that up. It's a little sweet for me, but it is extremely
Good for a mixer.
Yeah. So there's
Good
another thing on tequila. We could spend an episode on tequila. All tequila, whether it's mixto or 100% blue Weber agave, are allowed to add any sort of additives to kind of mask over any sort of harshness. So that can be sugar, that can be caramel, that can be, I've heard of lanolin, and yeah, you can add whatever you want. I think it's up to 1% by volume. Sweeter tequilas probably have something sweet in them.
To hide.
Yes.
To hide. That's
Yeah.
what he's saying.
What
That's
do
what
you,
he's saying. He's saying
what do you think about-
Casamigos has something to hide.
Instead of going individual spirits, let's talk about
Sure.
the whole thing on ingredients because we haven't
Okay.
even touched on what I think is even more important is the mixers, all the stuff
Okay.
that you're adding.
Fair
You don't
enough.
want to buy any pre-made mix. So no margarita mix, no Paloma mix. I don't even know what other mixers are out there because
I mean, I feel like they have pre-mixed drinks now, old fashioned, like
yeah.
you know, they're coming out of the draft.
Or
like
pina
that.
colada pre-made mix.
Oh yeah.
is
Oh no, God no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
what do we want for our mixers?
Higher in those mixers. Oh, way higher. So fresh juices. You want to squeeze the lime. You want to squeeze a lemon. You want to squeeze a grapefruit. You want to squeeze the orange for your cocktail that you're making right there.
That's great advice.
You don't want to just buy, crappy soda water or seltzer. Go up to Fever Tree because that is a better quality.
Wait, what is it called? Fever Tree? What's that?
Fever Tree.
I believe they have these sort of. They're like smaller bottles, right?
Yeah.
And they sell little 4-packs or 6-packs of them.
Yep. And it's all different mixers, tonic and soda.
I've seen
Tonic
those
is
used a
big,
lot.
with the quinine, you want less sugar. So it's always about the sugar with these mixers and other ingredients. You want less sugar. So you're making.
That's probably where the hangover is coming from too, right?
Yeah.
Well, that
right.
and a couple other things.
You drink, you buy one of those pre-made margarita mix and just start throwing in bottles of tequila. There's a lot of sugar in there and other things. Why would you do that to your body, to your taste buds, to anybody who comes to your house?
All right, so I'm going to do this. I'm just going to challenge you because everything you're saying, I have experienced firsthand. The one thing about, especially margaritas, and I feel like the best margarita we usually have is just lime juice, orange juice, tequila, Cointreau, right? Let me tell you about my
countertop. Water or
countertop.
something.
It's a sticky mess, and that's after 2 rounds. I like that. When they're this good at home, you want to have like 5 or 6, right? It's taco night and all that stuff. So there is this catch-22 for us to be like, is there a good? Because there's horrible margaritas could be so horrible.
Right.
You know, you're at the airport, you're at the chain restaurant, and you're like, oh my God, I have diabetes and a headache and a hangover, like in 2 sips of the straw, right? But, you know, there are, you know, some margarita mixes that are frankly better than others. I actually have encountered one where, oh, he's giving me the full nod. I'm going to send you something. I am going to send you something. I know someone who's put something out on the market that's shelf stable, actually. And she uses honey. You know, like that's like the sweetener in there. So I'm gonna send it to you, and we're gonna see. We're gonna give you a real challenge because it is completely respectable. It's not the same, but it's far less mess. And anyone who's made margaritas will tell you that's just part of the game.
So to counter that, and this will be kind of talk. We'll talk a little bit more about this in 2 steps from now, but margaritas are so easy to make, there's no reason to even have all that extra stuff. You take your bottle of tequila, you grab 1 lime, and you have some agave syrup or simple syrup or honey or whatever sweetener you want to use. I like the agave syrup. And you just pour 2 ounces of the tequila. You squeeze that 1 lime, that should be around 3/4 of an ounce. And then throw in about a half an ounce of the agave syrup. Shake it for 30 seconds and then pour it over ice. That's it. There's no mess.
How much of a body is that going to fill a glass? You know what I mean?
That's going to be around 4 ounces. That's 4. Now, next step in this whole idea of elevating and house parties, you can pre-batch all of that. So the morning of your party, just grab 40 limes, squeeze them, you know, get into your little rhythm in your system. Boom, boom, boom. You squeeze all the lime juice out. You pour in the vodka or the tequila. You throw in your agave syrup. Just stir it, but put that in a sealable container. That is ready for later for you to shake to order. The shaking to order is the important part of a margarita. So then you just, oh, I need 2 margaritas. Okay. You pour in your whatever 6 ounces, shake, 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 strain them out over ice, and you have 2 margaritas. You don't have any mess.
I'm gonna say this right now. I had strong words. I was like, listen, I believe in mixers. Making margaritas is a mess. However, what you just said of that pre-batch with those 3, paring it down to just those 3 ingredients as a pre-batch mix, that was like almost finding out about how'd you cook your steak, and dude's like, sous vide. What you know about that? You know what I'm saying? That's okay. You know what?
We have a family. We have a family out here where I grew up, and they would host parties for about 10 or 12 of us, and we went for the legendary pre-made margarita mix, and they would get the Contro from Mexico because it's a little less sweet than the one in America. And they would get that and a couple of, maybe a little orange, fresh orange, and it was pre-made. And like Steve said, just, you know, I think we should move forward into the technique part of this conversation for time, but
this is a really good step right there. So you have all your ingredients. You have your mixers, you have your spirits, you have your ice, which is very important. We're moving right into technique, and that's super easy. The equipment and the quality of the equipment to make stuff, your shaker tins, your spoons, your glassware. And I like to throw in all the little secrets. So most people didn't know the secret about what happens when you shake a cocktail and you're prepping it. They just think you're aerating or adding texture, which you are.
Getting it cold.
But you're actually diluting the components for a better, rounded, more balanced cocktail. So those are the secrets, the bartender secrets. A really the glassware is when you can start having a little fun, because there's a lot of great glassware out there, how it feels in your hand, how it feels when you take a sip of it. For martinis, these Nick and Nora glasses, or they're almost like a flattened champagne coupe. Champagne coupes are fun, but I cannot drink out of a champagne coupe. I spill. from a
Wait,
champagne.
you mean a flute, right? Is that what you're talking about?
No, the coupe, the one that looks a little flatter. Ryan can maybe pull up a picture.
Your nose, my internet's a little spotty, so I know what
you're talking about. When they do the whole champagne on the glasses,
yes,
they're all stacked up.
Yeah,
I have some of those.
Right, it runs into your nose, right, or that sort of thing.
I dribble a lot with champagne coupes.
Okay,
really nice dribble. Martini glasses. You also got to remember, you mentioned a second ago, is that going to fill the glass? A cocktail is better when it's only 3 to 5 ounces. You might have to make more cocktails depending on your crowd, but it drinks better for that short amount of time with the ice and all the components.
The dilution, yeah.
Yes, and you're enjoying the cocktail. The cocktail tastes fantastic from start to finish. Instead of standing around at a party with a tumbler of a margarita that by the time you get halfway, not even halfway, it's gross. Yeah, it's watered down. It's gross.
Straight up.
Yeah.
So this was the problem with drinking 40s back in the day. Yeah. You're like, you know what?
They get warm by the end.
Yeah, it's gross. No. By the end, a third of the or 2/3 in, it's just like swill. Then you're just like you're grimacing.
Let's just keep going because this ties right in. So on the equipment note, it's super easy. There's a great site called Cocktail Kingdom where you can buy a bunch of stuff. The Japanese made shakers just feel really good in your hand.
This is pretty cool stuff. You know this, man. I mean, like, because I was kind of like, seriously, Steve, I have a shaker. We're done. You know what I mean?
There's sort of those shakers that you get from like a obscure family member for Christmas, like one of those $20 ones or something. Yeah. So you're saying these are Japanese shakers?
Yeah, this, I always forget the name of this company. Corico. But Cocktail Kingdom has a slew. You only need one shaker. And the reason why a quality shaker matters is when you put this together and you start shaking, the $15 hand-me-down from somebody's family member is probably going to leak while you're shaking. This is going to seal, it's going to shake, and you're going to be able to shake, which we're talking about with this technique. You want to shake for 30 seconds when you're doing this.
Interesting.
You don't want to just go boom, boom. If you're at a bar and you watch the bartender make your drink and he or she does 2 little quick shakes and then pours it, just send it back. That's a gross drink.
You know what? Nothing. I have to admit, when he said that, I can picture, honestly, like the lady, her name's Lois. You're at like kind of an older, like kind of like a prime rib restaurant, and you see the 2 shakes. I see her doing the 2 shakes, and she kind of has this face like, and to me, her face says, without uttering a word, I should have quit this job 15 years ago. I'm not kidding. And then, because it's true, when you go to the places, and then it's like, you don't have to have the crazy mustache, but they're the people, and they just get the thing, and it's like, oh my God, they are really doing it for 30 seconds.
Yeah.
And you wait for those cocktails, but they're so good, and then they go down quick, and then you wait more. That was the problem with when I would go to Kohl's and get those old fashions.
Yes. And you only really need one shaker system. You don't need to buy a bunch of vessels for your stirring of a martini or whatever stirred cocktail you're making. You also want to stir for about 30 seconds too. It's less dilution, but you're actually cooling the liquid down a little bit. So you're putting just an extra effort with your technique into the cocktail, and the cocktail quality is just going to skyrocket. So you're already at...
So that's called Corico? Like K-O-R-I-K-O?
Yeah. Look up Japanese shakers. But you don't have to get this brand. I just like the way these feel.
Hey. It's not an endorsement, but it's not the wrong way to go either.
I was going to say, let's maybe we can get into the ice. I want to keep it moving here. So
So we're already at ingredients, spirits, mixer, ice. Now you have your technique. You got your great shaker, you got your bar spoon, you have your strainer, and it's just a simple Hawthorne strainer. It's the one that everybody has or sees. It's a spring that's about a crescent shape. That's how you strain out. You want to measure. We're not free pouring. This isn't that Tom Cruise movie where they just start throwing stuff all over. And
it's called Cocktail, Steve. Easiest title to think of. Cocktail. Didn't have to. Right. Literally, the movie's called Cocktail.
You can use any kind of measuring vessel, but you want to measure your ingredients out. You just don't want to say eyeball. Oh, that looked about 2 ounces of.
Is that the two-sided one? Does it have the 1 ounce,
Yeah.
2 ounce thing?
You can get a jigger that's a double-sided, and it has graduations like 2 and 1.5, and then 1 and 3/4 ounce. These OXO or OXO little 2 ounce measuring cups are great. So you have all of that. You're putting it together. Now, let's just talk about classic recipes. They don't have to be classic themselves, but you want to have 3 recipes kind of in your back pocket that you can just whip out and start making when people are coming over. It's Tuesday night and you just want one cocktail.
Let's hear this.
I like a perfect martini. So you're using dry and slightly it's blanc, but it has a little bit of sweetness. So I do 2 ounces of I use rye, I use vodka, and then a half an ounce of blanc and a half an ounce of dry vermouth, and then just stir and pour it into your martini glass with a little lemon twist, or you can throw
What's
in
blanc?
your olives. There's a pre-prohibition recipe that this goes into the final point of the whole conversation.
You're hearing this? A pre-prohibition. I mean, just. I'm sorry. I think I'm the only one who's still just a little like, oh my god, he just whipped out the Abraham Lincoln book.
Yeah,
of
is this
thing.
is this on a tablet or something? Is this in Latin?
Yeah, it's in Latin. So always experiment. So you have your classic 3 recipes that you're going to have in your back pocket that you can just start making great cocktails at home. But that doesn't mean you can't experiment with all of those cocktails that you're making at home. So I add, and it was a friend that turned me onto it. They found this pre-prohibition, or a bartender turning onto it. Just add a little bit of orange bitters. 1 drop to the martini changes the whole experience of the martini.
Wow.
We got to make a video of this. I have to ask you though, when you said blanc, is that you mean a kind of vermouth, right?
Yeah.
A martini's vodka and gin plus a vermouth, right?
And you want to have quality vermouth. You don't want to just buy bottom shelf crappy vermouth, has sweetener in it. I keep in my refrigerator sweet, which is the red one, dry, and then blanc is kind of in the middle. It's still white.
Interesting. But I've never heard of this. That's cool.
Yeah, just a little sweeter.
So what kind of vodka should we be using for a vodka martini?
So I use Belvedere. I like rye. I like the flavor of rye. You already brought Belvedere up.
That's basically the best. I mean, isn't that it? What, Belvedere, Chopin? Am I missing something?
Chopin is potato. And I don't really like the flavor of potato vodkas.
You bring me potato?
Yeah. And then another easy recipe is an old fashioned. You guys love your bourbon. You know,
old fashions.
Straight 2 ounces of bourbon, 1 teaspoon of your sweetener, whatever it is. I just had a old fashioned up in the mountains last week, and they used agave syrup for their sweetener. But I just use syrup, or you can make simple syrup, which is really easy to make. You just take water and sugar, 1-to-1 ratio, stir it while you're boiling it, and then let it cool down, and you can use that. You can even play around with those simple syrups and start adding ingredients to them to infuse more flavor into the sweetener. For like an old fashioned, you could throw some orange peels in the simple syrup while you're cooking it. Get an orangey flavor to go along with the thing. But it's simple. 2 ounces of bourbon, teaspoon of the syrup you're flavoring, and then some bitters. And then you can start. We didn't even talk about bitters in the category of ingredients. There is a huge range of bitters. You can have your Peychaud at your house and your blood orange. But there's companies like in Los Angeles, Miracle Mile. He just has a ton of different ingredients, bitters. So you can.
I feel like these are all potential, additional content that we could be providing to our people.
Yeah,
we should get a quick little bitters video from Steve.
Yeah.
So anything on the topic today we haven't touched upon yet, Steve,
No,
that
so
needs to be
straightforward.
addressed?
Ingredients, technique. Have 3 recipes in your back pocket. It can even be 2. We didn't even go into we did the margarita already, so that was my
What's the
third.
third? What's the third one? Margarita, martini,
Margarita.
old fashioned.
Yep. Margarita is straightforward. 2, 1 lime and a half ounce of the agave syrup. The perfect pre-prohibition classic martini was 2, and then a total of 1 ounce of vermouth. Not quite 50. Well, I guess that is a 50-50 martini, but it's half ounce of the dry and a half ounce of the blanc, and then a couple dashes of orange bitters. And then you have your old fashioned, which is just 2, and then a tablespoon of syrup, and then throw in your cherries or your orange peel, and then bitters for that as well. So ingredients, technique, classics, and experiment. So to experiment, you start playing with different bitters. You start playing with infusions, both in simple syrups and the base spirit. You can infuse a bottle of vodka or tequila with other ingredients that you want to start playing around with and infuse the actual spirit before you even make the cocktail. Have
There's this
fun.
bar in Pasadena in Old Town, and they do that. I think it's called King's Table. I don't know if it's still there, but that was one of their great selling points. Is they had all these infused liquors that they were making themselves, and that made it like a really fun place to go to for me
Mhm.
because you're getting something unique.
Yeah.
And
Huh. Okay, so I have some marching orders from this, which is I think the whole point, right? I'm totally going to try this margarita. Totally trying the margarita. Sounds so simple and so good. I am going to step up to the $30 tequila because the best part is when you get a good tequila like that, it's just great to sip. I love
Yeah.
having that kind of towards the end of anything, really. It's just especially if you're kind of full, looking to kind of finish up that meal. But $30 tequila. I'm gonna try this margarita recipe. I'm a guy as far as bourbon, so I need 2 options. Old Forester, Buffalo Trace, I think are pretty respectable
Yeah.
cheap bourbons, right?
Perfect.
I buy them and I go, this is good and
Yeah.
very affordable. What should I get that's a step up from that? So I need a step up. I need to look 2 shelves up from Old Forester or Buffalo Trace. And then I would love your suggestion. I'm a guy who, if I'm feeling special, right? I'm like, just the check just cleared. I'm gonna get a bottle of Noah's Mill. It's a hot one. It's a spicy
One of my
It's got a lot
favorites.
out.
It's one of my favorites.
What should I get that's 2 shelves up from that? So I need to level up from an Old Forester / Buffalo Trace, and I want to level up from a Noah's Mill. What do you got for
So,
me?
well, and really good point, especially about the tequila sipping it. If you can't have this ingredient in your cocktail on its own, and that includes the mixer, the juice, whatever. If you
That's
can't
hot.
sip that on its own, why would you put it into a drink?
Sizzle.
Yeah.
Sizzle it.
Yeah.
Greer, just freaking. That's like Tyson. You're out in the first round. The minute didn't go happen yet. Oh, okay.
So there's some things
So
on
obvious,
bourbon.
but
There's some things on bourbon. So barrel strength, so a little higher alcohol. Like Maker's Mark, I think comes in at like 40. That's a wheated bourbon. It's a little softer. It's not a very assertive bourbon for a mixer. I like getting up to the 45 or 50 barrel strength. It's a little more ABV in the spirit, but it really shines through in a cocktail. Um, a lot of people don't even consider, or maybe only insiders consider, Four Roses. I think is one of my favorite. Well, it's one of the best bourbons on the market. Instead of
Okay.
just doing the entry level of uh, a specific bourbon, do a single barrel. So instead of yellow label from Four Roses, do the single barrel Four Roses. You're
Okay.
getting into a weird territory with bourbon because so many collectors are out there. They kind of scoop up some of the higher quality bourbons
see.
pretty quickly. So you don't really get to see. So you have to really look around on a bourbon shelf to play around and try different things.
It seems like, to overgeneralize, though, we have the standard whiskeys, right? They usually offer tiers higher. So if you do like the general Four Roses, see if they have sort of a more select, and then obviously maybe talk to the guy at the store and see if there's something going on with a wait list for the the special editions, different barrel.
The wait list.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Well,
yeah.
I mean, well, it's like the Blanton's thing, It's like some liquor stores, they have their people. They're like, hey, the Blanton's is in, and I stopped by and they're like, hey, we only got one box left. They disappeared this morning,
Yeah.
So they would probably benefit people to befriend maybe their liquor store, and then take whatever Old Forester. You can buy a real cheap Old Forester, or you can buy a nicer Old Forester, and maybe a lot of people don't know that.
I mean, I have to tell you, and I learned this because I was treated to an Old Forester tasting and dinner, and I had several, and there were two that were like really outstanding. One is the 1920; it's like $50, which isn't that bad for bourbon, really. For some, it's good. And there was this other one, and I remember the year; it was 1870, and I liked it almost as much. And it wasn't the second most expensive either. It was flat out cheaper, but I adored it. That's I mean, I see things. I want to try something different, but I'll talk to the guy at the store.
No, so go to Four Roses. Go to Four Roses. Find a single barrel Four Roses. Then there's an entirely different category of bourbon that really has exploded the last 5 or 6 years. Single barrel chosen by the store that you shop at. So, Maker's Mark, Bullet, all the bourbon producers. Four Roses really took it to another level, and they're really great expressions. They will send a retail shop down the street. Here are 10 single barrels, because they taste different depending on the mash bill, what ingredients the spirit was made with, and where it ages in the rack house. It changes the flavor. Here's 10. You guys try those 10 barrels. Pick your favorite one, and we're going to put on our label, specifically chosen by blah, 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 whoever the retailer is. So you have those 10 barrels, and this is a very low number because a lot of these guys will shoot out 1,000 different barrels to different retailers. You have 10 different barrels going to 10 different retailers, and those barrels, in theory, all taste completely different. They might be spicier, they might be softer, they could be barrel strength, not diluted down, so 57% alcohol. Yeah, so that's a whole nother category.
That would be store choice.
Yes,
I'm gonna do that. I think I'm gonna see what they say. I'll tell you that much. Really good. Then, this could be my favorite episode because I've got some real. I'm going to the store shortly after this. I think my back is miraculously cured. By the way, I think we talked about this before we started. I totally woke up and my back was like that of Montgomery Burns. I just felt a sudden surge. Maybe I'm getting a little too confident, but I think the whiskey is going to set me free. This is exciting stuff.
Yeah.
What also is fun about this is the length of time these bottles last. So you don't have to just have one tequila. You can have two. You can have several bourbons. You can have, but even just one single bottle, it's not like going to the store and picking out a really beautiful Pinot Noir from Santa Rita Hills that you and your wife, that bottle is gone that night.
Right.
You're going to have these like a regular bottle. If you do 2-ounce pours, that's 12 cocktails out of one single bottle that you buy. If you do 1.5-ounce pours for your spirit, your base spirit, that's 18 cocktails. That's going to last, unless you're throwing a party like we're talking about for Halloween. Those bottles are going to last a little bit. You can have a nice collection. You can play around with the different flavors from each individual producer of a single spirit. We didn't even talk about gin. Gin is a really fun category because you can buy one that's a basic juniper-driven dry London gin. You can buy one with fun ingredients like the Hendrix with the cucumber. Find the one that does the saffron. I swear it's Citadel. You'll find it. and you get to.
That's a good point. Gin's kind of like Vans. You want to have a couple pairs, like different colors. You know what I mean?
You were gonna say like a van you drive. You want to have a white one to pick up strangers in. You're gonna
and with balloons, free balloons.
So let's
one last real quick.
One last thing before we wrap it up.
Yeah, that just reminded me of something else. Care for your ingredients too. The vermouths are a little more fragile, so you might not go through a full bottle of vermouth. Buy smaller half bottles. And after you pour out, you're making your martini, you pour out your ingredients, use the vacuum stopper to seal it back up so the air is out of it. Put it in the refrigerator on the bottom shelf so it doesn't oxidize. And you can save these ingredients a little bit better. Nothing worse than a vermouth that is sat in your bar in the dining room for 3 months. Just with a screw cap back on it, and it goes hot and cold in your house, and that vermouth is going to taste like crap.
All right.
Okay,
that's just extra care to your ingredients too. And that's it. So ingredients, technique, your 3 in your back pocket recipes, and then experiment. Have fun.
All right, elevating your cocktails today with Steve. Thank you so much for this. I learned a lot. I
did learn a lot. I feel like I went to school, and I don't regret it. And I showed up to class. I feel like I went to school and I showed up to class.
Yeah,
that was really good. I can't wait to release this one. So on that note, you guys, thank you so much. I think what we gathered from this is don't put anything in your drink that you wouldn't just put in your mouth by itself, right?
You wouldn't drink. It sounds obvious, but let's be. I mean, especially with bitters, I'm like, I have to buy this stuff. Fine.
Yeah.
And then
like margarita mix, you feel your teeth melting when you drink it. So,
yeah.
All right. Well, thank you guys for another amazing episode of Eat This, Drink That. We will say goodbye to Steve Greer and Ali Khan, and thank you.
That was my
See you guys.